In real life, it's like a tunnel connecting houses, like Diggory says. In real life, it's also like a long, sleepy morning on a vacation day. And third, it also reminds me, in an interesting way, of the initial entrance to Narnia back in the first book Lewis wrote, the first Narnia book he wrote, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It reminds me of that in a couple of ways. So first, one of the notable aspects of the distinctiveness of the nature in Narnia that came to attention in that first book he wrote, the Wardrobe book, one of the notable things that you noticed was that time was different. So you go into Narnia for hours and hours, or for days and days, or years and years, and you come back exactly the same time as you left. So your adventure, which is usually what a visit to Narnia turns out to be, your adventure will seem to have taken no time at all. And isn't that kind of just what enjoyment is, experientially? Enjoyment is the thing that seems to take no time at all. Fun, engagement, delight, rapture, smiles, laughter, all of these kinds of things sometimes seem to take no time at all. And yet, even though they seem to take no time at all, at other times they seem to come into a life of their own in which they seem to slow time down in a wonderful way. Particularly as you grow older or as your mindset adjusts, you might notice that a little more. But that's the kind of thing I think the land of Narnia kind of seemed to be expressing in that wardrobe story. This innate sense that we have as children and even as adults that sometimes time is a variable with a life of its own. And we kind of wish that certain kinds of things wouldn't be limited by time. And also we sometimes feel that time is skipping and hopping along with us. And other times, we kind of feel like time is slowing down to a delicious crawl. And I think in a really significant way, speaking more about how the story was told around that part with the wardrobe story, I think the land of Narnia, especially in the context of Lucy's initial discovery in those initial parts of the story there, as Lucy discovered the unexpected within the mundaneness of the wardrobe, I think Narnia in those initial chapters basically represents joy. The kind of joy that Lewis wrote about in his autobiography, Surprised by Joy, the kind of delightful, enraptured transport that takes us up with a stirring in the heart and a lifting of the soul. I think that's what Narnia really was in those initial bits there, as Lewis kind of spontaneously created this world out of his creative intuitions. So not in an allegorical sense. I don't think you could ever sustain that. Narnia is so full of witches and evil, and the whole land is governed by this dreadful curse at the time. So not like that. But not in any directly allegorical sense, but rather in terms of the way inner intuitions and creative impulses will, in any creative process, are going to connect the works of a writer with the things that he loves, the things that he knows from reality. And for Lewis, I think he was trying to create an experience for Lucy that reflects the same thing that all children, including himself, including me, and probably you, and probably most or all of us, but this thing that children long for on one level, and also end up experiencing on at least in a limited way, which we're always longing to experience on a deeper, fuller, more immersive, more life-changing kind of way. We all want to enter Narnia, so to speak. Not in the technical way. It's not like we all want to find some alternate layer of existence that is under the curse of a wintry darkness, but more in that superficial experiential way that reflects specifically what those chapters and the feeling that whole thing caused and tapped into. What we're longing for is the magical splendor of a snowy white wood that comes just out of the blue, comes to surround you and leave you speechless. The transport, pardon my pun, the transport of going from the mundane to the unexpected, that lifting feeling inside your stomach when you look around you with wide eyes to find that the impossible is spreading around you like a beautiful snowy landscape, and the enrapturing curiosity as you see in the distance this funny little fawn carrying an armful of parcels through the snow up to his house. Not unlike when you see a radiant smiling Santa Claus with a big white beard, or when you see a bunch of elves scurrying around at the North Pole, or when you see your own living room on Christmas Eve with brightly colored presents packed around the Christmas tree in the dim and delicious glow of the gentle colored lights. Okay, so I'm getting a little afield here from the Wood Between the Worlds, but my point is that I think Narnia initially represented, in those first scenes when it was introduced in the wardrobe story, it basically represented joy. And I think that's part of why it made so much sense for the metaphysics of that universe to include these modified laws of the nature of time. Because on one level, true joy sometimes does seem to step outside the ordinary nature of time, and we're always wishing time could just slow down and stay in the best moments forever. And sometimes at some particular points, it almost seems like it does. And those initial visits to Narnia, I think, were tapping into all of those intuitions on some level. And I think The Wood Between the Worlds taps into the same concepts, but just in a slightly different way. The wood isn't a place where you go off to have adventures, a place where you long to go because you're bored and there's nothing exciting in life. The wood is a place where you escape to when you're exhausted by the oppression of evil and suffering and fear. And you're allowed to just exist in this beautiful place where nothing ever happens and Uncle Andrew is never going to go. And you get to just be there and not be bored or lonely or afraid. And you don't need to worry about finding something to do, because in this place, staying in one place for a long time isn't a way of straining against nature. In this reality, it's a way of going with the grain of nature. In this world, that means you don't have to be going anywhere, doing anything, or fretting about anything at all. So first I compared it to Tolkien's elf havens, then I compared it to transitional spaces and sleepy mornings in real life, then I compared it to the initial entrance to Narnia in the wardrobe story. And then number 4, I think the wood can be compared to